So much for joining us.
Glad to be here, Mary Beth. Thank you very much.
Yes, of course. So, for those who aren't familiar with you yet, why don't you give a quick introduction to yourself?
All right. I'm Jeff King. I'm with Ramey King Insurance. We're an independent insurance agent in Denton, Texas. We handle all types of insurance, but have a practice group for commercial real estate, primarily multifamily. We have 25 people in the agency and have specialized since the mid 90s in multifamily and work nationwide. A lot of our work's in Texas. That's where we are, of course, but we work nationwide. And,
Great. So, I have a bunch of questions for you today.
all
I
right,
want to start off with apartment underwriting.
all right.
First thing, broad question: what are some tips and things that multifamily real estate investors need to know?
They in I look at it. I'm also an investor, so I look at it from the investor side and picture holding or looking at the offering memorandum. And most of the time, you're looking for the square footage, the rents, what you think the rent might be, and the update information. But some of the things we need as an agent are not necessarily prevalent on this form. And we of course we gather square footage, valuation, annual rent, and but then we go into some update information, and we'll need to know the age of the roof, and all of this is available from the seller or from the broker, so they'll have this. But age of the roof, depends where you are, but roofs are important. If you buy a property that has an old roof and you may get to repair it, that's one of the largest expenses you can have. So you want to know it's a younger roof, or at least some details of it. The other part is the type of wiring. Copper wiring is preferred wiring, but you'll see other wirings. Back in the 60s to the 70s, there was aluminum wiring that was used, very common, and aluminum has some issues with how it conducts heat, which causes some potential fire issues. Most aluminum wirings have been pigtailed, and there's several versions of that if you can find out what type of pigtailing was done. If you do run into a property that is bare aluminum wiring, and we see about one or two a year, that usually within the first 90 days you're going to end up having to and wanting to pigtail it. Another part is this is only 2 to 3 years new, the type of breakers. They typically well, not newer properties. For the last 50 years, we've had breakers, not fuses. But there was a type of breaker in the 60s to 70s. I refer to them as stab lock, or Federal Pacific is a certain manufacturer. And just try to find out what type of breaker it is. And all you have to do is open the breaker box and look at it and read the manufacturer to know. It took me a while to know that myself, for that matter. I had a property like that I didn't realize it, and it became an issue to me. Um, Updates on plumbing, not that critical, but and most people don't just replumb something, but I have seen a lot of properties that have done a lot of work with water conservation. So maybe commodes and sinks have been replaced, low flow, things like that. Counts as plumbing updates. Air conditioning. If you have a newer property, you've got central air conditioning with, if it's 100 units, you have 100 different compressors. I know those have all been replaced from time to time. But if you still have a property with a chiller unit or a single boiler unit, you'll want to find out the ages of those as best you can. It's not really easy to determine, but those are things that aren't just necessarily available in what you're looking at the beginning. But ask the brokers. We love our brokers, and they'll have answers, or as best they can, or can get back directly to the seller. Or if there's not a broker, just be prepared to ask your seller this information. They generally will have it, and at least some kind of answer to it. Um, Hopefully those are the things you don't necessarily see in buying a property. That's why I spend a little time with it. And we need to know that, and it's somewhat aggravating as we're asking all these questions that don't have anything to do with rents or market value or all the things you're looking for as an investor. But this is kind of protecting your backside, because these are costs you may end up having to assume to correct something.
No, that's great. Definitely making a point to look for those things to have that on your list because that could save you down the road. That's great.
Absolutely.
So shifting gears into loss runs, can you
Yep.
explain what are these? Why are they needed? How do we get them?
A loss run, well, first, insurance companies try to predict the future of claims by looking in the past. And what a loss run is, it will be from the prior carriers. We try to put together 5 years worth of experience, but it will be a form from a carrier, and I'm just going to use Hartford as a carrier. It'll have Hartford at the top. It'll list the policy period. It will list the type of policy, property, general liability, umbrella, or if it's combined. And then it will actually list any claims that have happened and will show what's been paid or what is reserved to be paid. And it's it's just proof of claims. We try to get that. It's fair. It can be fairly difficult to get all three of those. Sometimes we'll substitute a statement from the current agent, a statement of claims, but it's just putting together the loss history. This is available from the seller. The seller has to request it from their carriers, and so it's not something we can get. We can do the no loss letter or the statement of losses, but it's something they have to get typically from their insurance agent. And our carriers pretty much, there are times we don't need it, depends on the property. Maybe we can go online and rate it without it. A problem we run into, many of these properties, an owner may have only owned the property for 2 or 3 years out of that 5 year time period. Um, and they don't have the ability of going back to, say, the fourth and fifth year. But when they bought the property, more than likely they had to get loss runs for that time period. And I've directed several, just go back to your email, your file, wherever that is, Dropbox, and you'll find probably the loss runs that they had when they bought the property. And we gather from that. And then they order the loss runs for the 2 or 3 years they've had the property. We do try to get updated loss runs. Update is typically 90 days or younger if they're available. Just that a loss run is a dynamic thing. If things change in the claim, it can go up or go down as the claim settles out. Um, Another issue that does come up with loss runs, if there is an open claim, the carriers will like to know what's the result of this claim. I've seen claims stay open a year or two, and that's just somewhat neglect. Maybe they were looking to pay loss of rents that hadn't been settled yet, but carriers like to see a closed claim. That way they know it's done. But what a carrier does, they will add up 5 years of claims divided by 5 years of premium to come up with a loss or a loss ratio. And that's what they're looking for in doing this. And a lot of carriers will have a certain percentage they're looking at. And a challenge in the apartment business, one big weather storm, one big fire will throw that loss ratio out of balance. And then it becomes my job to convince the carrier to provide a quote, even if there's been a large fire 3 years ago, $1 million fire. That happens. That's why you have insurance. But we do try to get that, and we'll help you walk through it. But unfortunately, the seller is the person that will provide that. Or if we're looking at a property for you as the current owner, and we do that half the time as well, you'll have that. We can walk you through how to get that information without having to go back to your current agent. We can help you go directly to the carrier. Anyway, there's loss runs 101 there. So
Thank you. Now, my next question is how to handle a property claim.
what we see, this is in property claims. Obviously, that's why insurance is there. But the situation I'm referring to here is we'll have someone call and picture in a homeowner's. This happens in every type of property, but your neighbor's getting a new roof, and and they'll call the agent. Agent, send an adjuster out to determine if we have damage. Well, what we're trying to do is avoid anything on your claims history. My advice, frankly, on any type of claim, particularly weather related claims, which might have a higher deductible, to reach out to your trusted contractor, have them come out, review your property, determine if you have damage. But hail is something we see a lot in Texas and occasionally, but wind damage, things, whatever it is, have them determine if your property is damaged and try to come up with an estimate. If it's close to around or under your deductible, you might, many people will call us to find out what's my deductible and is this type of thing covered. And we'll record it, but we won't report it to the carrier until either we know it is a bad claim, it needs to be turned in. But my suggestion on those claims, have your trusted contractor review it, give you an idea, then call us. And then we'll turn the claim in. But if there's not if it's close to the deductible or just not that big of a claim, unfortunately, that turns into a cost of doing business to take care of it internally. Hopefully, it doesn't happen that often. That can be expensive. I don't mean to downplay the issue, but our goal is to keep things off the claims history. Even a claim that's paid, someone has a $10,000 deductible and the carrier pays $2,000, a $12,000 claim. That may or may not be worth turning in. I'm spending the owner's money here, unfortunately, but I don't mean to be doing that. But make filing the claim worth it, and we see plenty anyway. But that's my advice going into a claim, unless you just know it's a bad one, we need to turn it in. And I'm just talking property liability claims. Is another discussion. Yeah, maybe injured parties. That is worth more discussion, and most people don't know what that's worth at this point or what it may be. So, and we want the insurance company to address those quicker. So, anyway,
Yeah, that's great
that's my
advice.
thoughts on claims.
Yeah. Now, shifting gears to coastal,
All right,
how does that affect property insurance?
coastal is fun. Just if you're coastal and have coastal property, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I do see where the neat thing about real estate is you can buy anywhere with third party management. You don't have to be there. Hopefully, you'll see the property every now and then. But I have people not on the coast buy something on the coast. And the coast is typically the first one or two counties from a coast. That's tier one and tier two. But the things to watch there, we will typically, the rates may be higher, and you just need to be aware of that from your budget, from your pro forma. But you'll typically have a higher deductible, a higher wind and hail deductible, and you may even have what's called a named storm deductible, which may be higher. Many of these deductibles are a percentage of the valuation. It's not a flat dollar amount. And for example, if a person has a $10 million property, and has a 2% wind and hail deductible, that's 2% of that $10 million. So they may have a $200,000 deductible. Actually, loss of rents is included in there too. But that's a pretty substantial deductible. And the named storm, I mentioned that. These are if the storm is named a tropical storm, a hurricane, that you may have a higher deductible. Just watch for those deductibles. Many times I've seen quotes where it's not presented as, honestly, I think upfront as it should be, or it's just presented as a percentage, just like we've just done some math, what 2% of 10 million is. A person just needs to be aware of what that dollar amount is. It can be pretty substantial. Just be aware in coastal when you go there. Coastal is great investments. Not to downplay where the property is, but it can affect the insurance premium and the coverage. And actually, that we lose some of our carriers that just don't make a market for coastal. Coastal hurricanes are the granddaddy of the claims. Tornadoes are scary. Hail is an aggravation, but a hurricane is just so broad and regional in what it does. It will get most properties. And I think many years ago, Hurricane Ike that went through Houston was a $10+ billion claim. And it actually continued up into the Midwest as the tropical storm continued. Now, that is a big one, but that can be what they look like.
Yeah.
Be aware of what you're doing.
Yeah, yes. All
That's
right.
it.
So last topic I wanted to cover was deductibles. Let's get into that and some options there.
Okay. Deductibles similar to this, you will typically have, I've talked about wind and hail deductibles. Just be aware that sometimes we'll actually see carriers limit wind and hail or not even covering it. But the other deductible that you'll hear it referred to as AOP. So what the heck is AOP? I mean, insurance has its own language anyway, but AOP is all other perils. Typically, it's all other perils except wind and hail. It's not there. There are limitations in insurance. Not every type of event is covered, but the AOP is typically a lower deductible. It might, depending on the property, it may be 5,000, 10,000, 25,000. But under AOP is typically where fires are covered, bursting of pipes, freeze claims. I'm thinking of the freeze claim back 2 years ago in 21, one of the biggest claims we've had. Vandalism, theft, damage by cars, things like that. Typically, it's a lower deductible. Just be aware of what it is. Our industry doesn't. You'll just see it on your policy 10,000 AOP, and that means all of the perils. There can be some other deductibles, but those are the two biggest deductibles. Um, Switching to general liability, sometimes we will see deductible. Let me go back to property. I've already talked about if a property claim is under your deductible, don't turn it in. Find out your deductible, find out the damage, and then determine if you turn it in. But in general liability, you may have a deductible there. It's typically smaller. The carrier is not suggesting that you try to handle your own claims. Many times there are injured parties, there may be attorneys involved. At that point, go ahead and discuss it with your insured. Some of these claims are frivolous. Just because someone fell down or thinks they fell down doesn't mean a claim needs to be turned in now. But if you get a demand letter or you know there's injuries, go ahead and let your agent turn it into the carrier, so the carrier will have their adjuster, and if it requires an attorney to handle it and get it settled the way you'd want it get it settled. So turn in the liability, but think about the property claims. So it's a liability. You don't see that many deductibles. It's usually fairly small, and sometimes the carrier will ask you to pay it to them up front. Sometimes they'll settle the claim and then send you a bill after it's settled, which is I prefer to pay up front because the bill will come later. Liability claims typically take longer to settle anyway, just due to the nature of them. The carrier is first defending you as the owner, trying to determine if they should pay it, if there's negligence involved, and the extent of the injuries. But anyway, there's the thought on deductibles there.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for answering all my questions today. And for people watching, if they have more questions for you or they want to connect with you, where do they find you?
Our website is rameyking.com. That's RAMEYKING.com. We have four people, counting myself, devoted to multifamily. Our phone number is 800-453-9691. I have, like I said, three other agents. I'm Jeff King, Aaron Kelso, Dylan Conan, and JT Lynch. All are available, all know their stuff. The other thing we do offer, so we do a lot of work with new owners. As you're looking at a property, having decided if you're going to make an offer on it, you can call us or make contact us at a very early stage. We'll take the information, and if we can quote it, we will. But most of the time, we'll come up with a working indication that you can plug into your pro forma to see if you can assume the insurance premium on the offering is going to be the insurance premium you're going to get. There's changes happening, different markets. Like we love our brokers, but you need to do your own pro forma. But call us early. In the next 2 weeks, this form will be available on our website that you can fill out and send it to us. Uh, feel free, feel free to call us or make contact at any time. It takes out of 10 properties a person may look at. We don't mind doing all 10 of them. As you know, three or four of them probably won't pencil out anyway, and three or four you'll decide to make an offer, but you need that number on all 10 properties. So we're glad to be active at a very early stage. People do also ask me, how long does it take to get a quote? It takes, I like to say, 10 hours of hard work spread out over about 3 weeks. And what the heck does that mean? Is that we gather the information, then we get it to our three or four carriers that we think will be competitive on your property, depending on the details where it is. And then it's a back and forth effort, getting information, answering questions back and forth. But once again, Ramey King Insurance, rameyking.com. 800-453-9691. And we do this all day, every day. So our goal, obviously, we want to write all their property, but initially our goal is to be able to service to them in this process. There will be questions that come up. We'll insure what we're supposed to insure. There'll be some that don't make sense. I have brokers call me from time to time. Jeff, this probably won't turn into an insurance customer for you, but I've got an insurance question. Here's what we're running into. Does this sound realistic, or is that what you're seeing as well? Are you looking for confirmation? And most of the time, the agents, the buyer's got a quote, seems high, deductibles seem high, and they're just looking for some type of confirmation that that's a good number because closing's Friday and they need to move quickly for that matter. Anyway, look forward to be of help once again nationwide, and glad to be at help at any stage for the new owner or the long-term owner or their scheduled properties that's coming up in the next couple of months.
Great, awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Jeff. And
Uh,
we'll say goodbye to everyone. Thanks for watching, and definitely connect with Jeff. We'll put his website in the comments too, so you guys can connect with him there.
uh,
Thanks, guys.
thank
Bye.
you very much.